God, I should remind myself to plug in my mic, shouldn't I? Hello, hello, hello. But at least I'm glad that I'm noticing before we start, you know? So that's a good thing. Hello, Victoria. Good to see you. Hello, Lily. Hello, Zayad. Time for Whip Wednesday. Let's go. Hello, Pewdie. Hello, TopG. Hello, Abhishek. Hope you're all doing well. I'm ready for another session. I will say, the change to only have one question a week, it's a game changer for me. Honestly, I love that format. It gives me way more time for the individual person and to really take my time thinking through the feedback. Because yeah, I had a busy day today, and I started prepping a little bit later. But I feel like I've gone through like a bunch of people and have like a bunch of really good notes. So I am liking it. So hard to choose only one question though. It is. It is. But here's the thing though, right? Like before, people would just give me all the questions and then I would have to pick. I would have to pick all of the ones, right? So this is way better. Way better. I don't have a question this week, so I have two next week. It doesn't work like that. It does not work like that. Good thing for us too, because now we have to be more creative to fit all the requests in one question. Yeah. I can't wait to see how creative people are gonna get with that. I'm looking forward to it. Let me quiet down the music a bit. Hello, designer. Hello, Mike. Good to see you all. But yeah, it's been good. I've been working. It's interesting. So with the team challenges, right? This is the last week that we have the team challenges. Like that, all the teams are freaking crushing it. So if you're in here and you are doing the team challenge at this point, keep holding on. It's the last week, and then you get a little bit more flexibility in the time, right? One thing though that we have sort of wanted to improve for the longest time is the way that we do the voting for the judges, right? This is not necessarily going to impact like anyone doing the team challenge per se, but we've tried to find like a system. We've tried to find like a system that's going to work for the future and is going to be more scalable, easier for us to set up and all that kind of stuff. Long story short, we found it. The issue is that there's a bunch of restrictions with what I was already doing to the site, because I was doing an overhaul of the main landing page of the website, right? But then these changes came in as well, and I found a really good way of setting those up. And I was like, cool. Which means that I need to publish the site to get those changes to get live. But that also means that I now have a deadline by the end of the week to finish up the landing page redesign that I was doing as well. So my week turned from like normal chaos to absolute chaos in like a day. So yeah, that's fun. Fun. But hey, we will have like a sick new landing page. And we are going to be way better set up for the future, for like voting for the teams. I actually want to show you because I'm actually like pretty proud of it. So let me give you a sneak peek of what that looks like. What that looks like for the judges. Hold on, give me a sec. Give me a sec here. Let's go here. Let's do this for a second. Oh my god, there's so much junk. Okay, let me show you. So this is what the new page for the voting is going to look like for the judges. Let me switch over. So the judges get to see, this is using sample data from like the last challenge, right? So this will all be like new challenge stuff. They can basically go through all the images, click away all the spam that I've set up, which is great. And they get to pick for each category, right? They decide on like basis of 10 points. The totals get added here, and then for each category, right, they have a scoreboard. So now you can actually see, like, if you do adjustments here, like what your total ranking is going to be for like all the teams in the team challenge, which is awesome. I think this is a way better system than we had before. This also helps us like set things up in the back end as well. It makes our, oh my god, it makes our life so much easier. Because to let you in on a secret, we were using mirror boards before, and then Sunny, she was manually calculating like all the scores for all the teams and then doing it again to make sure that they were all good. This is now gone. It's all automated. How was it before? Yeah, it was through a mirror board. So let me actually see if I can show you the difference. So yeah, we will have like all the teams in here, and then they get compiled into like a leaderboard. That data gets sent over to us, and then we have that in our backend. Like we use a Notion page currently for that, and then it gives us like all the all the data that we need. However, what is really cool about this, and this is something that is not going to be done for this team challenge, but I want to do that for the next ones, is that we want to visualize the scoreboard for future challenges, right? And maybe we do something where it's like retroactive as well, but that you can see your score and, I don't know, maybe some of the feedback that you got from the judges and all that kind of stuff on a page somewhere, right? This is the first step in building that system so that we have a more cohesive system on the website. And to give you a comparison, it's interesting. We've been experimenting a lot, and I've never really showed you this, right? But we've been experimenting with a couple of different ways of voting. So we have points. We used points before. We also tried to do it in a different way at different time. So this doesn't have like any of the data, right? But this is the way that we used to do it before for the previous challenge, for example, or for one of the previous challenges, where we would give you access to a judge board and you would have to drag in an image, and then you could also drag in an award if you wanted to, and then we would calculate the points based on your ranking, right? So you can see it's very manual. It takes up a lot of time for everyone, right? Now we're optimizing it all. So yeah, you can kind of see what that looks like, right? So this is what that would look like for the previous challenge, for example, where this would be the ranking, and then there would be feedback here, and then the awards would be handed here as well. The issue is, we now have to, once we got this, we needed to do all manual calculations, right? We had to basically take all this stuff and then manually do a lot of data entry on our side for like all the judges that we have, right? So imagine if the challenge grows over time, what if you want to have that scalable? It doesn't work, right? It completely breaks apart, because then Sunny is basically going to be working 2 days nonstop to just doing manual data entry. So yeah, I'm happy that we have this. It's going to be way better. And then, yeah, it's going to be, oh my god, I'm looking forward to having this set up for the future with a scoreboard on the team challenge pages. It's going to be awesome. So yeah, that's one thing that I've been working on. This is in a pretty good state. There's still some stuff that I need to tweak here and there, but it is functional. And then there's also the new landing page that I'm working on, but I'm not going to show that. That's a tease. So yeah. I'm actually glad with the one question. I find it hard sometimes to come up with 2 questions. Oh, interesting. This is talking about like the questions for Whip Wednesday, right? Oh, that's interesting. Maybe people saw it as like, oh no, you have to have 2 questions. I saw it as like the limit is 2 questions. Interesting. Very nice. Yeah. Oh, and also we are gonna have something very similar, like this scoreboard, for the community vote as well, because that is something new that we were introducing, and we're gonna give everyone access to this from the community, and they can vote on their winners. And I think we're just gonna do top 3 or something like that, and then we'll see. It depends. Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, lots of work going on. Conceptual vision is hung up on the word stylized. I see that it is British spelling and stylized is the American spelling. Wasn't aware you could write it both ways. Oh yeah, and I write them both ways like 50% of the time. Like, I have not settled on any way of writing it, and to the chagrin of other people on the team. Because even this is the weird thing, like, I use multiple programs, right, where we type stuff, and then one program is set to like British, and then one program is set to American, and then sometimes I'll write it correctly in one program, and then another program is wrong, so it's all over the place. But yeah, what else has been happening? I've been so head down into work, honestly. Well, not only work, but then also this stuff that I don't even know what the hell is happening. Honestly, the only thing of news that I sort of saw flying past was that Anthropic is now a sponsor for Blender, but that's about it. I just seen the headline. Don't ask me any questions about it. I don't know what their involvement is or what the hell they're doing. I have no clue. Color and color are the same way. Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. Powertail is saying, I think I used to just try to come up with 2 questions because I could. It is funny though, because 2 felt like way too much, and 1 feels like, oh shoot, what's my 1 question? Yeah. When there was no restriction, the questions came better flowing. It's kind of the same philosophy of when someone says, what's your favorite movie? Yeah. Yeah, I knew that was going to be an issue. It's just, there was honestly no other way, right? It kind of sucks because here's also an issue. Well, an issue that I still struggle with to this day, right? Is I'm asking you to ask a question, but sometimes when you don't have the experience, you don't know how to ask a question that will help you the most, right? So sometimes that might end up in a situation where it might honestly be better to just showcase your work, and then I come up with the 1 question, right? Which might also work. But in other cases, if you don't know things, how do you then know to ask about the things that you don't know, right? That is sort of trap that puts as well. So there's definitely drawbacks to the whole system, but yeah, we'll see. I do like from like a time spent perspective and how stressful it was for me. It is yeah. I mean, it is way less stressful now. Just type help. Yeah. I mean, we actually have a person today who literally just has images, inspiration, that's it. Right? So we're gonna see. Yeah, that's my problem 100%. Like, how do I even ask about a thing that I don't know about? No, actually, I don't think that's your issue though, Pewdie, because we're gonna look at your work today, and you've actually done a good job of like asking a question, right? I missed too many with Wednesdays because I felt there is something missing, but I didn't know what I should ask for. Yeah. Yeah, maybe that is something that we need to take into account in the future, where Because here's the thing, right? Like if you weren't gonna ask me a question, and I do this regardless if you ask a question or not, I'll try to think about like the most pressing thing that I see in your work that has the biggest impact with the least amount of time spent doing it, right? Um, for example, and this is where the complexity comes in, right? Like if you're like 70% of the work is done, right? I am not gonna tell you to go back to the block out and like redo your composition and all that kind of stuff. Because that feels like it's pulling you back so hard that it will destroy your motivation, right? I don't want to do that. Sometimes that is needed though, right? And that's where like when is that needed and when is it not? No. Hmm. I like the one question a lot personally because it forces you to think what's the thing is that I'm feeling I need the most. Yeah, from all the iterations, I do think that the one question is probably the most useful for both parties. So I'm really happy with it. I like your picture wall. Is that your own stuff? Good way of making notice of something you've actually done stuff to keep motivation going. Yeah, like Powertail said, those are actually that's not my work. So I run Beyond Extend, right? Like the channel here. We do workshops. We're currently building like an online academy, but we also host team challenges. We do them twice a year, and actually one of them is currently in the last week of production, right? So the teams, I think we have 14 teams of 5 people working towards like finishing their environment as we speak. And every single frame that you see is a team of 5 that made it to the finish line. So that's what's on the wall. I'm really proud of it. There's a couple more frames there as well that you can't see. But yeah, there's a lot. And I think it looks like we're gonna have. I mean, all the teams are gonna finish this time, I think. So we're gonna have like 14 additional frames, which is just gonna fill like an entire bottom row of the whole thing. So many teams going even? Yeah. I'm really proud. We have an awesome team. It's myself, Sunny that are running the thing, right? From like an organizational perspective. But we have a team of 14 mentors, that's including myself as well. That are really, really trying to help like all the teams. And also we have the live stream on Sunday. So Sunday at 8 p.m. GMT, I think. I always get confused about time zones, but yeah, it's gonna be live on this channel. So if you wanna get notified for the Sunday live stream, you know what to do. But yeah, we're gonna sit down. Well, I'm gonna sit down with the judges, and we're gonna talk about all the work. We're gonna get feedback and all that kind of stuff too. So it's gonna be awesome. I will say though, framing your own environment is something really cool. I haven't done it, but the concept of it is. Yeah, so I still have the idea. I know what I'm gonna do. So I have my personal work that I want to frame, but I want to frame it behind my desk. But I'm gonna get panoramic. I'm gonna get panoramic frames, but I'm not gonna have them horizontal. I want to have them vertical. So I just show like a snippet of it. Then in between those, I'm gonna put like some audio installation. I think that's what I'm gonna do. Umbrella is asking, I don't know what to ask on Whip Wednesday. Can you leave it blank? Yeah, we were just talking about that, right? I think if you leave it blank, what I'll probably do is just focus on the stuff that I find most pressing, right? I know with a person today, I don't know if it was you, Umbrella. Let me actually have a quick look. Yeah. So for example, in your case, Umbrella, we're gonna talk about it later, right? But I asked a couple of questions to guide you towards the next week, and then I have a bunch of suggestions too. But it's just like really quick stuff, you know? So yeah, we'll talk about it in a bit. Do we no longer have Beyond Extent on Twitch? So the Twitch live stream was always under my own name. But I think in the future it's just I haven't had the time to set it up. I think in the future, what I want to do is start multi-streaming and all that kind of stuff, right? Yeah. Never out of ideas or plans. It's just I'm always out of time. But yeah. Do people actually prefer watching on Twitch? Because I feel like slowly over time, it feels like, well, the people are getting more and more used to the idea that you can watch a live stream on YouTube, I think. But if you start from scratch and say you want to watch a live stream, you are not gonna go. You're not gonna go to YouTube, right? I think that's still Twitch if you want to see live stream stuff. Hopefully it doesn't get confusing with feedback. It's worth trying. What do you mean? What do you mean, TopG? Beauty is saying, I prefer Twitch. YouTube chat is weird with the 2 sections. 2 sections? I don't even know 2 sections. What? Well, see, this highlights another issue, right? I don't know enough about YouTube as like a live streaming platform, so I don't even know like half the stuff that's going on. Whereas with Twitch, I occasionally use that to like watch other live streams. So yeah. Evening, Galazar. Welcome. YouTube, in my opinion, feels a lot better. It's for us specifically, right? It makes more sense because, I mean, we have like YouTube is like our home, right? Where Twitch would honestly just be to draw people in to then go to YouTube anyway, right? But that's the way that I look at it, right? It's not necessarily that I want people to only consume like the Twitch stuff. It's like it's marketing, right? Oh, interesting. So like live chat and then top chat, right? Oh, I thought that was only like a streamer thing. Interesting. Interesting. I always watch YouTube even on live streams since YouTube has a stream and normal videos, so it's super convenient. Yeah, that's true. That is true. That is the main annoyance that I have with Twitch is that they just don't store stuff anymore, right? So there's always going to be this flow of people watching on Twitch, and then whenever they're done, they go to another place to watch the recording of it because Twitch doesn't store it anymore, right? Yeah. Thinking about it, I'm surprised that YouTube hasn't made itself more implemented into streaming, like it's being able to recommend videos through stream. Well, no, I think they're actually doing a lot of that stuff. You might have seen this on YouTube videos as well, like the collaborations feature. I think that comes from a demand that is coming from streaming, but they're trying to implement that like YouTube wide. And again, this is my assumption, right? I don't know if that's why they're doing it, but it makes a lot of sense that is like a streamer thing, because yeah, when you're going to do a collaboration, it's usually going to be live rather than pre-recorded, right? It just makes sense to then also have it for the pre-recorded stuff. For example, we had a workshop with Yu Chu, and he also runs his own YouTube channel as well. And we were trying out some of the collaboration stuff. So yeah, it's interesting that that ecosystem is kind of like, it's growing, but it's going to take a lot of time, right? I think the benefits there is that you can also see, he gets updates for like the messages and the notifications, and he can also see like rudimentary or like basic analytics and stuff as well, which is pretty interesting. And you have some options there that you can tick on and off. But yeah, there's some interesting stuff here. But yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious. It doesn't hurt, right? Like the only thing that is always annoying when you're doing multi-streaming is honestly just chat. Chat is always annoying to get like one good like consistent stream of like the chat between platforms, because that's always chaotic. right? You've probably seen like multiple people doing like streams all over the place, and then they have like 4 different things open with like different chat windows, and it's just like, ooh. I thought OBS does it by default now. I don't think it does. I think OBS is like very bare bones when it comes to it. You can do it for even the stream that or like the chat that I'm running now is not through OBS. That is through like Stream Elements. Like I literally only have like Stream Elements or as like this single overlay that just manages like the chat. Oh, sorry, and some of the notifications and stuff as well. But yeah. Shout out to you. He's making great content over there. He is. He's doing really good stuff. And he has some new work up and coming, so keep an eye on his channel. All right. It's time to get down and get serious about things. You know what time it is? So if this is your first time watching this, we are going to go into the feedback session, but feel free to use this time while you're here to ask any questions. I've got a decade of experience in the industry as an environment artist. So if you want to ask me anything about making games, being an artist in the industry, anything like that, feel free to ask any questions. And we've got people raising their hand in class because class has started. I like this whole class idea, though. I don't know. So Zayad is gonna go first, then Powertail, Beauty, Victoria, and then TopG. Okay. Cool. Right, let me switch on over, and then we'll get started. Right, so Zayad went first. Did I already... I have not done anything. I will grab a snack, but there's no eating in the classroom. No, you're allowed to eat. Just shut off your webcam, you know? Okay, let's have a look here. So, where is your entry? Let's have a look. There we go. Hi Tim, I tried to build it more with nature, but I didn't imagine that it would have this impact, and I tried to match the texture tint to blend the materials. I'd appreciate your feedback. The landscape needs a lot of work. It will only be shown in a walkthrough, and for the last shot, the landscape will be the top-down view in an eye shape, and the sunk statue head representing the iris. So, okay, I didn't even drag that in because I thought it was just like to give me an overview of stuff. I honestly don't think this works at all. Like these 2 shots, again, I'm gonna double down on this, right? These 2 shots are totally optional, and I think they honestly just drag the quality of the rest of the shots down, right? This main shot looks really good. I'll have like a bit more feedback about that later, but this just doesn't look interesting at all. This feels very basic and blockouty, you know? You only want to get your best work on your portfolio, right? So you have to set a bar for yourself and say, hey, look, this is not raising the bar, it's gonna go. I think with this one, you can make something off of it. I don't think this is gonna turn into anything. It's too obscure. I don't think that's gonna work, in my opinion. So I would just remove this idea. And then, yeah, I mean, it seems like you really want to keep it, but I would also remove this idea. Because even if you're going to show it in a walkthrough, right? If you think about your environment, it is always really simple, right? It is always going to be this. It is just going to be this as a comparison. Is this as interesting as this? It's just not going to be, right? Even if you like do a lot of stuff about the landscaping and all that kind of stuff, it is still the majority of it is going to be sky, occluded like rocks, and then water, right? So it's limited in its potential, where this is the money shot, right? But hey, I'll leave that up to you. It's your portfolio. If you want to go and do that, that is your choice, right? That is your choice. Let me see. Let me focus on the other stuff, right? Because I think the stuff that you've actually done in comparison to last week looks really, really good. I like it a lot. So all the stuff in here is looking nice. I like what it's doing. There's a couple of things that... There's one principle. I spend a good... Okay, so here's a comment, right? So I spend a good time doing retopo and high to low poly to make it optimized for real time. That's fine. Just have it in like a separate showcase, like in a breakdown, right? And then showcase the topology. That's fine. But you don't need to have this like vista shot that is going to show you like a boring angle to then prove that you've done retopo, right? Those two things, they don't go together. Like when you want to showcase how you've done something, you do that in a breakdown. And when you just want to show off like the cool stuff, then you do that in visuals, right? But those things are two separate things. It is usually not the purpose of a beauty shot to showcase how you've done something, right? It's also not the purpose of a breakdown to sell you on the storytelling or something like that, right? Those two things are completely separate. The one thing that I wanted to talk about here is the idea of clustering. I think I talk about this frequently, but it's the idea that instead of, for example, the water lilies, right, which I really like as an asset, we need to find a way to make them more interesting to look at by like clustering them in a bunch of clusters rather than just scattering them almost evenly across the board. Right? We can actually indicate, I don't know, the path of travel for the boat by removing this group already. And then what we do is we just push like all the other groups like a little bit closer together. And then maybe we have like another group here. And then maybe there's like another group here, right? But that's going to give us more of a separation between all the elements. This principle can be used in a lot of ways, right? Same thing, you're already doing it pretty decent with like the pots, for example, right? You can have like a cluster of pots, and then you're not really going to see like pots everywhere else, right? Which is good. Same thing with the foliage here. It seems like the foliage is really randomly scattered at this point. So again, just like clustering, and then maybe here there's another cluster, and then it kind of like fizzles off, right? But that means that we are going to get rid of like anything that's outside of these clusters. So wait, let me take green. Because that is always going to look better, right? Because you can kind of look at it from like a shape perspective, where I think about this as we're playing with volumes, right? And the more noise that we add between volumes, the more difficult it is to distinguish those volumes. So what I mean by this is think about art fundamentals, right? If you have like two shapes, they stand apart really easily, right? But if we then start adding like all these other random shapes in between it, it becomes difficult to distinguish them from each other, right? Sure, like the scale still really helps, but it becomes way too noisy, right? So what I'm trying to do with clustering is basically the idea of, hey, let's remove a lot of those islands and just like cluster them together so that those main shapes, they form one big cluster, right? Makes it easier to look at from like an art fundamental perspective. And then the same thing can be done here, right? So with the stuff on the floor, you would always have like a really dense area here, and then maybe you have like a little bit of a fall off, but you don't want the fall off to be like all the way there, because then it just becomes noise again, right? So same thing here. Maybe you work around the pot a little bit, and then you have your core, which is going to be the densest point, and then the rest of it is going to be a gradient to kind of help you a little bit, right, with that transition. So it's basically pushing all the elements close together so that they read as one solid mesh, or like one solid, not mesh, but like one solid shape, and then have a gradient to kind of blend it with other things. So you can see that is a consistent theme that I use that in a lot, from like man-made to foliage to anything that you can think of. I think about clustering all the time. Another example here, you've got like a bunch of fern here, right? We talked about that last week. I would have more fern near the tree, and then have maybe like a little patch of fern here, and then maybe a little patch of fern here. And then the rest of it is going to be more or less open, right? Maybe a little patch of fern here. But that's going to help the readability of it, rather than everything just being freaking noise, right? We are art directing the way that we handle these shapes. So yeah, hope that was helpful. I hope that got you some insights. But this is something that I use a lot, you know, and you can use this in everything, anywhere, all the time. Cluster things together. It's going to be really, really helpful. Cool. Thank you. Thank you for showing your work. Next up, we have Powertail. Oh no, all the people that I haven't made notes for. Dang it. I swear I've done my prep. No worries. Happy to help. Next up is Powertail. So let's see what we can do here. For today's question, I'm currently looking at my scene and it feels like it's missing something. I feel like there isn't a lot of point of interest or visual interest going on. I know we discussed last week of bringing in small things like debris can help, and I wonder how it can make the feel. I was wondering how to make the scene feel more lived in and realistic. Well, I think one thing that was lost is you have in your concept this very sharp light, right? Like drawing your focus towards the back of the scene. Or like maybe not sharp, looking at it again, but you basically have this, right? So you pick the scene. You pick the scene where the focal point was this character, right? And it's almost like this character is on the precipice of like going into like the darkest area in the city, right? So yeah, that's one thing. You need to figure out what your focal point is going to be, right? Because you basically said like, hey, I am going to take this scene because it's a cool scene and I like it. But you remove the focal point from it, right? So either we do the same setup as the concept, right? And we find like a free character on Fab or something like that, right? Or we try to make like, I don't know, you can probably get away with something like pretty cheap because he's just wearing like a piece of cloth anyway. Mega scans, piece of cloth on top of it. Who knows? Maybe that will work. But you need to find something that is going to replace that focal point, right? Now, so the first option here is add the character back in, right? Second option could also be something that's already in the scene, right? Something else. We're going to generalize here a bit. One thing that I'm really thinking about is this door is kind of like nicely framed at the moment, right? if you open that door just slightly, and then you show something that's happening inside, that could potentially be your focal point, right? That could potentially be your new focal point. Yeah, you can do so many things in the scene, right? It just depends on what you want to do. So think about the story, right? Again, I think about story as an anchor, right? And in this case, it's going to be easier because you already have the world kind of built out, right? This is not going to be like a pristine valley full of like beautiful unicorns. That's not going to work. So it's going to be downtrodden. It's going to be like this little alleyway, but what is happening in this alleyway, right? That's what we're focusing on now. So yeah, think about what kind of story you want to say, you want to tell, and then see what you can get from there, right? Because that could give you like a new focal point. Because it can be literally anything, right? It can be a struggling family that just opened like their own bakery and they're trying to sell like their homemade bread. You could turn that little doorway into a stall, and then they're selling like, I don't know, back alley bread, you know? But it can be anything. It just depends on what you want to do. But that is just because that's what the scene is missing, right? It's just it needs a focal point, and by you picking the concept, you basically remove the focal point from it because it was a character. So, option 1, add a character, or option 2, come up with your own story, right? Yeah, and like all the stuff that you mentioned about like weather effects and small debris and all that kind of stuff, right? That is definitely going to help, but that is just set dressing, right? That is not the important stuff with the story. So start there, and then all the other stuff is, like I said, just set dressing. So that's more optional, right? We have to find out what the story is first and what the focal point is from that. Got you. I see what you mean. Yeah. And it can literally be anything, right? Like you could open the door on the left, you can open the door in the middle, you could add like a door in the back here, you could grab a character, you could have something, I don't know, what could you do? Yeah, I mean, it depends on the story. There's so many things that you can do, right? Doo-doo-doo. The story in mind for me was that it was like a villain or a convict alleyway. At first, I was thinking that the entryway where the character was could be the focal point, because from like a gameplay perspective, it's leading the player into an area. Yeah, but that is not giving you necessarily a story, right? And also, the thing that you mentioned, where it's a villain or convict alleyway, that is the area. That is not the story that's happening inside of that area, right? So you kind of have to make it about like a specific villain or a specific story that's happening, right? Like, what did the villain do? Why are we here investigating this, right? Try to think about it in those terms and try to make it more personal rather than, oh, this is like this alleyway, right? Because you are right, like from like a gameplay perspective, it's leading the player into like the next area for sure. But then that is not the thing that is exciting for me to look at on your portfolio, right? It is game creation, for example. If you're making an open world, right? You are doing a lot of work on making the open world look really nice. but almost no one puts the open world on their portfolio because that's the stuff, the transitionary period, the transitionary area between two interesting places, right? So you don't want your portfolio to be that transitionary area. You want your portfolio piece to hold something that is interesting to look at, right? Because that's what you want to showcase. Because sure, you don't need to put a story in here and you can just make it a transition area, but then what you're doing is not like individual storytelling. It is more like, I don't know, more like world building, and we are allowed to then put ourselves into it, or like our own thoughts into it, right? At least that is my opinion. Like if you want to show something of value, it needs to have a focal point, it needs to have a story attached to it, and like ideally that is more personal. So yeah, if it's a convict, then think about something. Think about what the person did, right? And why we are in this alley investigating this specific convict. For the portfolio, do we need to stick to 16 by 9 aspect ratio since it's game art, or can it be like 4 by 3? I mean, it can, but there's almost like no reason to. Right? I mean, you could display your art in whatever format that you want, really, right? You could have like a vertical shot of something, right? If it makes sense for like, I don't know, the structure that you're building. But then think about the medium that we're working in, right? And it's going to be highly unlikely that you're ever going to pull that off. So you might as well work to 16 by 9. Cool. I hope that was helpful, Powertail. Let's go to Pewdie next. Right, okay. Workflow time. I see it now. I'm going to go back and revisit the story I thought of and see how to integrate that back into the scene. Then it should lead into choices that create that feeling. Yeah. Like, yeah, try to make it more personal, right? And ask me, like, why, as if I'm the camera, like, why am I here, right? Like, why am I in this specific alley and not the alley, like, next to it, right? And try to make it, like, very personal. Or, like, try to make it personal. Try to make it a story about, like, a specific person or group of people or something like that, right? It could be a hideout of certain people, right? It could almost be, okay, imagine this, right? Like the door is slightly open. You see a table with like a bunch of hooded figures like sitting next to it, and they're like sort of scheming, and there's like a symbol next to the door, right? Like a symbol that is pretty subtle, but you can still sort of recognize it like through the paint layers, right? There's some interesting thing there's going on, because this is something that happens in real life. If someone wants this in certain countries, if someone wants to break into your house, they'll actually tag it with a certain symbol that is like invisible to you as a person going there, right? But these symbols go around in burglary groups, right? So there's like really interesting like subtle storytelling that you can do with that, where it's like, and you'll see this in like, let's say Far Cry or something like that, right? Far Cry went a little bit over the top, where, oh, the resistance is all blue, right? And then you have blue flowers everywhere. It's a little bit over the top. I would try to approach the same sort of idea, but in a simpler manner. But that's just one idea, right? Cool. Let's talk about workflows. So you've done a breakdown of this structure already, Pewdie, which is looking pretty good. So you've got your tileable number 1, which is plaster, concrete, and moss, which makes sense. I would potentially... Those are tileables, vertex paint. Yeah, you could probably do that. I'm going to give you an option here. This is more like an option. Decals could work, because vertex painting is good, right? But it's good at it is good at doing generic stuff, right? If you want very specific sort of leaks or decals or whatever, you have to make a separate decal for it. Cool. We got the wood trim sheet in purple. That makes a lot of sense to me. And then you were unsure about like the stuff up top here, right? I would say if you're gonna do this as a trim sheet, if that is a trim, then parts of this are also gonna be a trim. The only thing that is probably gonna be different is the core. So that is gonna be either a trim inside that same trim sheet or a tileable. Let's see. So the majority of that can basically be built out of the same components as here. And then whenever you have, I mean, you're doing these frames as well, right? So whenever you have stuff like this, I love this so much. But you can basically make this out of like a single trim. Because let's say your trim looks something like this, right? You have like a lip and then a smaller lip down here. What you can just do is you can just literally put your UV shell on top of it this way. And if you do that for all of them, they are just going to go like around without any interference, and you're never going to see it, which is really cool. I always love that trim. It's so basic, but I love it so much. And the same trim can be used here. And then for some of the other sections, I would just see what you can couple together from like this trim that you already have here, right? So try to use as much as you can from that. Then for these unique pieces, or do we want to do them unique? This is where we're going to go into some interesting areas. So you've already tagged this as a trim. I mean, okay, yeah, sure. If we want to do that as a trim, then again, we are just going to use the same thing here on the smaller stuff. Oh, you've already tagged it. Never mind. Never mind. And then this top part, what does it even look like? That can be a trim. Same trim. Super simple. The only thing that I would do unique, do you have like a unique thing? A door would be unique. It's just going to be simpler. There's no real way to make this from, I mean, there are ways to make it from existing trims, but then the question really becomes like, is it going to be worth it? Because for example, if you have like these sort of lips happening here, you could technically use the trim from up here, right, from the window frames. And inside of Unreal Engine, you could then just recolor them to yellow, and you could build, using the same trim, that door. So what I would do is try your trim first. If that doesn't work, make unique. Mama said, Emperor, welcome. Do you know of a YouTube channel that teaches me everything I need to become an environment artist? No, I don't think there is a channel like that, honestly. We are building hard. That's such a weird sentence. We are currently working on an online academy that is trying to do that, basically. But it is such a vast skill set that I don't think there's any YouTube channel that covers everything you need to have, because it is really vast. There are really good YouTube channels out there that like have really good videos on specific things and specific workflows and all that kind of stuff, and they show you like the really like overarching concepts. But there's no YouTube channel. Here's the thing. There's no shortcut. There's no easy way of just like going to this one thing and then following it and then becoming an environment artist. apart from school. Well, debatable. I'm not having that debate now, but what course? It's not out yet. It's not out yet, but we are building one at the moment. We plan to do an early access release in the next month, I think. That's when we're doing early access for our community members first, and then we'll slowly ramp up. So it's going to take time. So don't wait on that, but yeah. For the spikes, as I call it, do I make it as a plank or exactly these spikes but sculpted? That would make sense. I would say that's why I was sort of hesitant at the moment. I would make them as like separate spikes. Marmoset, we don't know yet. We haven't decided on the final price yet. But to make those spikes, I mean, here's the thing. Like, you can do everything with a trim if you wanted to, right? It just depends on what kind of sacrifice you're willing to make. So I would again say try a trim first. If that doesn't work, make it unique. That's always the thing. If you're working with trim sheets, I would try to make it out of a trim sheet first and then see if I need to do it a different way, right? What you can do is also do a combination of the two, right? So you could have, let's say, this is your UV, right? So these are your UVs, and then let's say the bottom here, those are trims, and then you could keep the top for unique pieces, right? Sometimes this is referred to as a hybrid trim sheet because it's trying to be a hybrid of unique and trims. This is useful in certain cases when your texture is self-encapsulated. What I mean by that is that the reason why we use trims is because the idea is that we want to use them on more than one object, right? That is where the real power comes from. However, if we do a hybrid trim sheet, we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot because those unique pieces, they usually can't be used somewhere else, right? But if it's like this is a perfect example. If it's one building, you can do that. Yeah. Yep. But the rest of it seems good. Oh, and then this part here, I would also do that unique too. Make that unique. Well, let's see. What does it look like? I would make the pattern as an alpha, right? So just use opacity. If you want to have depth, use parallax occlusion mapping, and then make the frame out of your trim sheet again, and then you're done. That's what I would do. Cool. I hope that was helpful, Beauty. Well, let's keep it moving. Let's go to Victoria next. Victoria and her awesome boat. Cool. So this one is prepped already. You were asking on feedback of the renders. So first of all, I really like them. Really nice and clean. I think you've done a stellar job on them. The wireframe reads pretty good as well. I like it. I like it a lot. Like I said, nice and clean. There's one area where I really like this stuff, right? Like this is the magic. I call it the juice, you know? This is the juice. And you want to squeeze that juice for as much as you can. And I'm literally talking about this, right? We'll zoom down to the pixel level. This is the stuff that I want to see, right? Like literally that little light edge that gets reflected. And it just tells me so much about that material. That is the juice. So if you can, try to capture that in more areas if you can, right? Sometimes this is the part that I call like a light painting, because I literally take a light and I just move it around in my viewport until I get those like nice edges on the lighting, you know? That's what I do. You're probably going to have a lot of good results when in this shot, for example, you use a rim light. So like a light that is going to be behind your subject matter, because that is going to do this sort of highlighting on the edges, right? So try that. I said here, get that roughness slash lighting response in more places because that is the thing that you want to do. But yeah, really good stuff though. Like all of these are great. I think here's an option. It could be interesting to add like a little bit of water and then fade out the edges and all that kind of stuff to kind of have it on like a separate island. I would say that that is more optional. If you want to keep these as like really clean breakdown pieces, I think that's also fine. I wonder if we can do something more interesting with the presentation. That's not necessarily going to take away. Because you've got your main shot, which has the water. And I wonder if there's like an effective way of doing like breakdown that is not going to be too distracting. Well, or too much work. I can't really think about any, because I'm thinking about like, you could almost put it on the shoreline. You could have it like put up on like wooden supports or something like that. But again, that is asking for more work, right? And I don't think that work is necessarily gonna make that big of a difference. But yeah, just throwing some ideas out. When it comes to these, I said it here. I love it, and water sucks. This is not your water, but water in general just sucks. Yeah. So be careful with distracting highlights. With this kind of stuff, I would literally, behind the mangroves here, I would literally just put like a blocker that stops you from getting those highlights. Right? I think the highlights here, like in this area, are pretty good. But anything outside of that range, I would try to put stuff out of the camera that is not like letting those things happen. Oh, I see. I guess just to have something underneath so that it's not floating in air. Yeah, maybe even just having a yeah. Here's the thing, right? Like I'm thinking about a lot of ideas, but all of them would be like too distracting. For example, if you grab like Megascan's dirt and you put it on the dirt, right? That could look good, but then you're distracting from the clean presentation that you want to get, right? So maybe try experimenting with just like a flat plane with maybe like a color underneath it, or I don't know, something like that. Oh, I wonder, they had this beautiful oceanic raft in a museum in Berlin. And I wonder now what that presentation was like. I mean, it was huge. I was in the room, but I can remember the room because you go into the room on the second floor and you have to go down where that huge raft is. And I think it's one of the few ones that are remaining still. But I'm specifically wondering about how they presented it. I'm not gonna find this though. Oh. Okay, this is not... Okay. I mean, this is sort of what I was looking for, so... It is tiny. Yeah, maybe something like this, like a neutral kind of like museum kind of floor, you know? Maybe that's something to play around with. This thing was beautiful though. Oh my god. The outrigger boat from the island of Luf. Okay. What is this? We're not really gonna get like any good stuff here. Dang it. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but Yeah. Yeah, that's also a good shout. Like looking at Indiana Jones and how other games approached it, I think that's also good. But yeah, just some ideas, you know, trying to do something more interesting than just have like a gray gradient background, you know? Try to do something more interesting with it, I would say. Like do some quick experiments, right? Like try the Megascan stuff. Like maybe there's some like Megascan sand that you can put it on. Maybe there's like some flat museum floors that have like a little bit of a texture to it, right? Because that's what I like about this. That is just not a flat thing. It has a little bit of texture to it. Yeah, some stuff to play around with. Yeah, cool stuff though, Victoria. I really like it. Really, really well done. Now it's coming down to like the final bits of the presentation, you know. So good stuff. Who do we have next? We have TopG. TopG's next. If I remember correctly, I think you were asking for feedback on the roof shapes, right? Let me have a quick look. Cool, thank you. No, thank you for sharing. It's looking awesome. Surface variation. I like feedback on surface variation on my big surfaces like the walls, the floors, and the roofs. Okay. Cool. Surface variation. I think you've done a good first pass on like the ivy. The surface underneath the ivy, right? But it's too strong. It needs to be like way subtler. It almost needs to be like some very subtle like leakage, you know? Then I draw all over it. And what you also want to do when it comes to the damage, you probably want to locate that close to your frame. The frame of stuff, right? So if you look at references, you're probably going to see a lot of breakup around like the frame of things, because that's usually on a flat wall, like water and all that kind of stuff, it's just going to rain just straight down, right? But wherever you have something that can hold water, that's usually where stuff begins to break down first, right? So usually around the frames, you're going to see a lot of wear and tear, just because that's where like water and moisture gets trapped and all that kind of stuff. So you're going to see a lot of dirt there, and then you can have like these big patches in between, right? But yeah, references for these are your friend. I think in this case, what you're gonna find is that most of the references that you're gonna see are gonna be very subtle, right? And then it's your job to take it to the next level by exaggerating what you see, right? And still making it believable. I think that's what you're gonna commonly find. And also think about where the damage would be logically, right? So for example, this is a good example. When you have a light like this, okay, what you're basically saying now is that the wall broke down first and then the light got installed, right? because the light is installed onto the brickwork, right? So either they did the plaster afterwards, like after the installation of the light, or it already fell down and then they installed the light, right? Because what you would probably see is probably going to be like somewhat the inverse, right? That your plaster is kind of still sticking around like this frame and holding onto it because it's literally screwed in place, and then the rest of it is going to be damaged. You know, so I try to think about these things from like a very logical standpoint, you know. Maybe that's like underselling like how much I've looked at like reference over the past freaking 10 years, but that's at least the way that I tend to think about things. And then the same thing, I think you're doing a great job here with like having the gradient, right? That's where you obviously like a lot of dirt and a lot of stuff happening at the bottom near frames. You can definitely exaggerate that a little bit. And then the same thing here, right? If you're doing this kind of dirt blending, make sure that it's not only consistent on the wall, but also consistent on like the concrete trim and potentially like a bit of the floor, right? Because what makes things like this blending believable is that it transitions from surface number one. Well, it basically transitions from like the wall to the floor, right? So you have dirt kicking on the floor, then you have like that concrete trip that is also like dirty, and then you have like the wall that's the same kind of dirt, right? And it's that transition between all the surfaces that's kind of blending them together and making it look nice and consistent. That sort of thinking can be done in all these areas, right? So especially if you have like tightly closed areas like this, you're probably gonna see like dirt on the floor here. Well, are you? Because you're gonna see wetness. So let's say dirt on the floor here, and then in this crevice there's also gonna be dirt, right? And then maybe around this place you're gonna see less dirt, because what is happening here is you have water coming down the pipe, and I don't know if that's drainage or not, but if it's not, you're probably gonna see an area around here that is cleaner because it is wet, right? So that's usually my thought process when I go through these things, and then I let my logic kind of guide my artistry here. And then any corner, any transition between two different surfaces, just add dirt, you know? Like all these like little spaces. That's all gonna be dirty. But yeah, it's actually okay to keep bigger surfaces somewhat empty, right? Don't be afraid to keep areas like a bit more open, right? So for example, in this area, if there's nothing happening on the center wall, that is good because we want to see more detail happening around the frames, right? Because we don't need to, again, it's the idea of rest versus detail, right? We don't want detail everywhere because then nothing is detailed, right? It just becomes noise. So try to think wherever you have opportunities, and with opportunities in this specific case, I'm talking about bigger open surfaces, make them cleaner, you know, have less stuff happen there. For example, here, this brick wall, this section specifically, let's say this section here, being clean, same with this. Right, so if we imagine that this stuff is clean, that would be totally fine. Because what we're doing then is we're applying the rule of like, well, this design rule, right? Like 80-20, 70-30, where like 30% of the detail and then 70% rest, right? So we're basically, again, we're clustering things together, right? And we're trying to cluster all the dirt and grime down here, and then the rest of it becomes more clean, right? Cool. So, a couple of things. Dirt and wear. That is not readable. Talked about the 70-30 rule. Same thing, basically. I think about clustering because that's easier, you know, just pushing things together. Does the same thing. I mean, simplified, but yeah. And then, yeah, logic and reference based, you know. Have a look at what this stuff does in real life. It doesn't even need to be the exact same location, you know? You can literally go to any older building that you have in the region and just look at where the pavement transitioned into the wall. You're gonna see a lot of stuff there already, you know? Pay attention to those like tiny things. Soak it up. We should do a class excursion, you know? We're gonna go outside and touch some grass, and then we're gonna learn about the world. All right, TopG, thank you for sharing. Jacket Demons. Keep calling you Jacket Diamonds. I guess it rolls off the tongue, you know? Hey, Tobias. It's been a while since I've seen you, buddy. How are you doing? Last time we saw each other, I was still living in the freaking UK. God, time flies. Jesus. Right, okay, let's have a look here. So, Jacket Demons, what is the question here? Is there anything at this stage that you still think needs to be addressed? Maybe something about the geometry or texture side that stands out? Right now, my biggest doubt is about the ground vegetation. It doesn't feel quite right to me, but I'm not entirely sure what exactly is off. I'm doing all right, man. Yourself? Yeah, I'm doing good. You have indeed left now then? Yes, I have left like 5 months ago. That's what I mean. Time flies. Time freaking flies. Right. Cool. So your concerns about the grass, right? I'll give you a quick one. I think honestly, the talk that we just had about blending, right, and how different surfaces blend together, that is probably going to be the biggest thing, right? So your grass is going to be number 2, and then number 1 is going to be blending. What I mean by that is dirt creeping up on walls, crevices in walls being accentuated, like all the stuff that we just talked about with TopG, for example. That's the stuff that you want to do here, right? Like have dirt come up, like have dirt like cover these gravestones. Yeah, I basically want to see like a gradient on everything. That just it will blend the stones with the floor more, right? Which is pretty good. So we want to blend any floors. Okay, we're gonna broaden this even. Any horizontal surface needs to blend with every vertical surface. Because everything is going to have dirt on it, everything is going to have some little wear and tear on it, and that gradient going from like dirt at the bottom and then dirt on the bottom of the statues, for example, that is going to help everything blend together, because now everything is too clean. We need to do a blending pass between everything to make sure that it all blends together nicely. Tobias is saying, whoa, it doesn't feel anywhere near that long. What the hell? Yeah, dude, I know. I mean, time... Yeah, time freaking flies. Ugh. Yeah, it still feels weird though. Still feels weird. Having left again? I don't know. But hey. Hello, Rita. How's it going? It's going good. Thank you. How about you? Now, let's talk about your grass here, Jack of Demons. The main thing with the grass is that it is too detailed. It's too noisy. So, first thing is noisy. Well, no, we're going to break that down. So it's noisy, right? Where does that come from? First thing is from your colors. The second thing comes from your geometry. Let me explain. So colors, if we look at this patch is specifically, if we zoom in, right? There's a lot of color variation going on already because we have dead grass and a live grass, right? And what that is doing is basically, if we look at this in terms of like clusters, right? We can kind of see this is a dead patch, this is a live patch, this is a dead patch, this is a live patch, dead patch. And this is what our brain is interpreting, right? It's trying to pattern recognize like different sort of patterns within the grass, and it's trying to do this, and it's overwhelming us at the moment. So what we need to do is we need to, in your case, probably either pick one of them or try to blend the colors more together, right? Probably the easiest thing to do is making the alive grass, making it look dead. I don't really like what that's going to do with the overall colors of the scene though. But yeah, or you can do the opposite way, right? Like try to make the dead grass alive by like playing around with like the hue saturation and all that kind of stuff, and try to push them more together. That is going to fix a part of it. The next thing is, it's also very demanding in terms of like its raw geometry, right? Its detail amount. It is just the amount of stuff that is asking for our attention, especially if we compare this to like the concept, right? Of course, this is a concept, but you can kind of see, sure, there is like spiky stuff happening, but the colors and the way that it's lit up, it's making almost one shape, and that's why it's way easier for us to understand what's happening here compared to 3D. So this is the way that I think, right? Like I think in like a very concept art way because I'm looking at it from like art fundamentals, right? So you see me do that live here, where colors, if we even those out, that is already going to help. And there might be some other things that can help us even more, but maybe the roughness. Playing around with the roughness a little bit so that we don't get like highlights on the fringes and all that kind of stuff is also less demanding again. And then maybe we'll see what the next step after that would be, right? By the way, I like this area way better because what it is doing, it is clearly showcasing to me like this is the core, right? So this is, let me pick a color. So this is the green grass. And then you have on the fringes, you kind of have this patch of like dead grass, right? That already helps in the readability of things too, right? So that separation between the two helps a lot. So try to mimic that more. Because they are clustered. Let's go. Clustered together. Seems I didn't add enough intensity on my decals. I don't think you did. They're very subtle. But here's the thing, right? Like, we need to focus on this read, right? Like, from this distance. And I think with anything, it is better to do it, to overdo it in the beginning and then slowly push it down to like what is acceptable, rather than to be subtle about it and try to increase it ever so slightly. So try to be more, I guess, aggressive with your changes. But yeah, Cool stuff though. The other thing that I would also say is something to still look at is your color. Your color of the overall scene, right? Yours feels way more on the green spectrum, and it doesn't have that like interesting color complexity yet that we see on the right. You know, just comparing those two. Cool. I've been playing Assassin's Creed Shadows, and it became painful to look at my whip scene in comparison. The quality gap is so huge. Yeah, but also, like, you shouldn't compare your work of a single human being to, like, the work of literally an army of artists, right? That is unreasonable to do. Look at the credits list of Assassin's Creed Shadows. You are never gonna match that. Well, sorry. How would I say this? You can potentially match the quality if you spend enough time working in the industry and like really pushing yourself to that quality level and making a small scene, right? You can match that level, but it takes time, right? So in the beginning, trying to compare yourself to like an army of like literally hundreds, if not thousands of people making art for a living, you're not going to win that battle. It is just unrealistic expectations, right? So yeah, don't even think about that. It is still good to kind of give you like, if let's say what I love to do. I have some screenshots from Assassin's Creed Shadows. Let's pull them up. Let's have a chat. God, where does it store it again? So, if we have a look at some images. I mean, even this, right? Like, you see like what kind of nerdy screenshots that I take, right? It's like, how did I do this? How did I do this? But even this, right? This little simple image of this like edge of a roof, this takes a lot of time to make and to make it look as good as they do, right? So even the individual components take a lot of time. But yeah, you can tell like just how all the surfaces interact together and the composition of everything and like the gameplay. Like it is really good. It is really good. But don't compare this to, well, so here's the thing. What I was actually going to say is that you can actually, for example, let me go back, right? Yeah. First of all, you can see where they took shortcuts, right? Because some of this stuff on an individual basis just doesn't look good. It doesn't have to, right? Because it's just like, this is just like individual stuff that's built with a trim sheet and no one's going to care about this, you know? Same thing here, you know, like if we're going to be really nerdy and nitpicky, like the texel density of this is not as intense as high as I want it to be. This intersecting with like this pole doesn't really seem logical. It's all that kind of stuff on an individual basis. This stuff falls somewhat short to some of the stuff that we can potentially do as well, right? But we have a different focus, you know? Assassin's Creed is building a world. You as an individual person are trying to build like, I don't know, a single asset, right? So they're gonna be judged on different parameters. But yeah. And what I was gonna say, I like using game screenshots to have a look at what they can establish on like this level, right? And then look at the individual bits that contribute to the whole scene. Because some of these scenes are beautiful, you know? But then in some cases, and this is in no way the fault of the artist, or this is not even like a bad thing necessarily. There's only so much time that you can spend on making like, I don't know, a single asset look as good as you can, you know? There's still restrictions of the production. But I do like looking at the bigger picture and then going down to like a normal level and seeing how they did the individual assets, right? I don't know what they did with the lighting, but it feels so good. Yeah, I mean, they had really good stuff with Valhalla too. Valhalla was a beautiful game when it came to its lighting, right? The lighting take in Valhalla is probably what they used here, and they just iterated upon it because that was so good. So, I maybe Valhalla was more dramatic, dramatic in like the sense of it was like more artistically dramatic, very harsh shadows, very intense cloud shadows, and really unique like weather conditions. I really liked Valhalla for that. Anyway, we're getting off track, so let's see who was next. We've got Abhishek. Oh, this was just like a couple of things, right? Because you were asking me for feedback on your blockouts. There's only two things. I think the tower in the back still feels really random. It might honestly be better without it. Because it feels like it's not even part of the same building. And if it isn't, then... I mean, if it isn't, then we're going to have to separate it out with like atmospheric fog or something like that, right? To make sure that it doesn't read like the same building. But it kind of feels at that point, might as well just throw it away, I don't really feel like it contributes like an interesting thing to the scene, because it literally feels like it's just like a tower, just like plonk, stacked on top of it, and it feels really weird. The other thing is, watch your spacing. So I guess this is more like a level design sort of bit of feedback, but thinking about the playability of your level and making sure that people can still go through alleyways and all that kind of stuff is something good to keep in mind, right? So for example, here we have these two buildings that are super close to each other. Give that a little bit of space, right? Like imagine that I have to walk through it. Make it somewhat comfortable for me as a player to walk through that space. Because right now, it feels like I'll draw. This is a top-down perspective, right? So this is, let's say that this is the alley. Oh my god, that looks so weird. Let's say that this is the alley. It feels like this is the character. And this is from top down, right? What I'm trying to convey here is that as a character, if it feels like it might go through it, then people are going to try and they're going to get stuck and they're going to get frustrated, right? So just make it wider or just close it off completely. But yeah, those are like the main two things that I wanted to bring up. So short and sweet, but the rest of it is looking quite nice. I like what you've done with the tower, having it rotated a little bit, looks good. And then curious to see what you're going to do with like atmospheric depth, because there's a lot of stuff that you can gain from that too. Yeah. Oh my god, I was thinking about adding a castle in the back or something. No, don't do a castle in the back. Just do the building. You can still do the castle in the back if the building's done. Start with the building first, and then we can do the castle maybe. Don't start to run before you can crawl or something like that, right? Like, take it step by step. The good thing is like if you've made some reusable components of the main building anyway, we can honestly just rip them apart, make a building that works in the background, and you're done. We don't even have to make something new. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Abhishek. Makes sense. Yeah, again, always start with the smallest possible thing and then build upon it. You don't want to build the biggest possible thing, especially for your portfolio. You don't want to build the biggest possible thing and then realize that it's too big and then have to shrink down, because that's way harder to do than to scale up afterwards. Cool. Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you. Looking forward to the Black Flag remake now. Yeah, I've not played the original Black Flag, so I have no idea. It is the only thing that is so weird about that. I mean, it makes sense, right? Like, everyone knew that Black Flag was coming and all that kind of stuff. The only thing that just doesn't make sense is Skull and Bones. Like, I don't know, maybe they're doing something really smart with it where they were building like a lot of cool tech with Skull and Bones that then got reused in like Black Flag or something like that. But I doubt. I mean, it could be, and probably there is. But then it just feels weird, as in, why wouldn't you just make a Black Flag? You know, only Black Flag. I don't know. I'm so confused by it because it feels such a weird move to have Skull and Bones there, just basically being the same. This, like Assassin's Creed people are gonna hate me for this, but like from a concept perspective, it's literally the same concept. No, sure, it had different restrictions, and it was like the game eventually turned out to be not that similar, but like you're still a pirate, you're still on the seas, you can travel to places, and blah blah blah. So it just feels weird to have like these two games now side by side because it feels like they're competing. Black Flag was really cool. Maybe the map was a bit small. They weren't happy with Black Flag, so they made Skull and Bones. Lol. No, because I think Black Flag is made by a different company, right? Like a different studio within Ubisoft, and I think Ubisoft Singapore was a support studio. I'm not 100% on this, but because the interesting thing is that Skull and Bones was the first project that Ubisoft Singapore did, right? So that doesn't mean that they're to blame for like all the issues and all that kind of stuff. You know, it's a very difficult thing in such a wide organization to make something new. So they can actually be proud of what they did. It is just weird from like a portfolio perspective, right? Like imagine we're like the people at the top. That you have Black Flag and then Skull and Bones like releasing relatively close to each other. Just feels weird. Maybe it will be the first Assassin's Creed game that I'll buy. Yeah, I mean, I do love my Assassin's Creed games. Some more than others, you know. But I just love the worlds that they make. Like, God, so good. Like even just walking around in shadows, right? You saw me flicking through like the screenshots. It's really nice. I think it is interesting. One thing that I started noticing is that I wanted there to be I guess more random stuff to do. As in like not like the mindless like side quests and all that kind of stuff, right? But just like more discoveries. It felt like Shadows was like pretty light on discovery, which was interesting. And at first I thought, oh, maybe that's because I haven't unlocked like the second character yet, so maybe that will unlock the full world, you know, and then I have to discover a bunch of stuff. But yeah, I don't know. It feels pretty light on that. Interesting. The only AC game I played was Assassin's Creed Origins, and I remember the snakes gave me jump scares. Dude, those snakes were so loud. Oh my god. They gave me a jump scare too. You reminded me of that, actually. Oh my god. They were so annoying as well. Ugh. I like the environment in AC games and do a bunch of screenshots myself. Yeah. I haven't played neither of them, but I want to see the art. Yeah, like honestly, like if that is the main goal, you know, sometimes you don't buy the game because it's like, well, you have to pay like a lot of money to then just like appreciate the art, you know? So I get it. I have the same feeling with Dark Souls, for example, where like I know that I'm not gonna like the game, I'm gonna get frustrated, and then I don't get to appreciate the world that it's set in. But I also don't want to have an adventure mode or like a no enemies mode or something like that, because that would ruin the creative vision of the game, you know? So I'm like always like conflicted. But yeah, I mean, one thing that I can actually recommend for all of you is they do history tours. So for every Assassin's Creed game, they do like history tours, and they get like historians to talk about like some of the famous locations that they have in their games. Super interesting. Super interesting. I was listening to, I forgot her name, but like these, she's an Egyptologist, and she was talking about like the Temple of Giza and all that kind of stuff, you know? Like, it was really interesting to hear her talk about it. Hey Arvid, hey North, good to see you both. Hope you're both doing well. Yeah, there's some really cool stuff out there. I love watching that stuff. Because, sure, like, they get a lot of critique, right? Oh, Dr. Colleen, was that her? Yeah, that was really fun. And there's other pretty interesting to just see that they get like industry experts on to talk about like the historical aspects of certain things. And like, it's also interesting to know like what was actually historically accurate and what was actually not, just because then you get a realization of what they needed to change for like gameplay or artistic purposes. It's really interesting. Or at least I find it really interesting, all that nerdy stuff. Cool. Let's continue. So, Facia, let me have a look. Where's a little entry? So, post-apocalyptic trading post. I love feedback on the composition. Does the scale of the robot structure read well? And what should I change to make the scene look better? And how would I approach the scene like this? Okay, so we're only doing one question, but I kind of made it about like the composition and scale of things, right? And then I gave you some like extra tips. So this kind of hints at like all of your questions just like mushed into one, right? I would definitely make the robot like more impressive, because right now it's kind of very subtle in silhouette, you know? If we think about the lines that we currently have, like we have this line coming down here, and if we ignore the robot, this is basically the only stuff that we're getting from like a silhouette, right? I think we can make it like bigger, or maybe even do something where you like have open hatches, or you know, like maybe there's like a hatch here that is like a cutout, and there's like cables coming out of it or something like that. You know, try to play with the silhouette more. So yeah, make the robot more impressive. Do something more interesting with the silhouette, because if you make it bigger, it's gonna fill the space up more, which is gonna be more interesting, right? It's almost like it's crammed in the streets or something like that. And it also pulls the focus more as well. What could also, I love what you've done with the pose already, but I would love to have the feeling that it was like a more dominant force, that it was bigger and more intimidating, and that it kind of fell onto like a building and it's like smashed into one of the buildings, you know? I think that would be cool. The other things here is, these are some small notes, and this is a good tip for everyone. You can see here, this kind of set dressing, like you have like the, I don't know, the mini fridge or cooler or whatever here, and then you have a table in the middle. You see what that is doing? It is just all on one straight line. That just reads like very sterile. I've never been a fan of that. We can actually make use of the elements that we have here to direct your focus more towards the middle, right? So if we build bulkier stuff to the sides, that is actually going to create like a framing device where we focus more on the middle already, which is really good, which is what we want, right? So make those two things on the side a bit bigger, and then it's going to pull you in towards the middle more. So that is both making it like way cooler than it already is, and it is focusing your eye more towards where you want to look, which is good. But also you can kind of see it as like a gradient, you know? I always love to think about gradients and transitions between things too. So yeah. But yeah, always avoid things on the same level, right? Like one thing that makes things feel really gamey is that it's just a clean white slate with just like a thing plopped onto it, right? You'll actually see this a lot in. Can't think of a good example, but like whenever you have like a procedure generated level, and then it kind of flattens things out to then put another thing on top of it, right? So let's say there's like a bandit outpost. Oh, actually, Assassin's Creed has this. Weird way. I don't know why they would do this, but sometimes you'll encounter people in the wild and they're like starving. I have no idea why that is. I guess you can give them some food, but in those specific places, it always is a piece of flattened landscape, and it feels so unnatural because it literally feels like it's been purposely designed to not have that person that spawns in or groups of random encounters or something like that not intersect with the terrain, right? Because I'm pretty sure that there's some procedural logic behind it, but it just reads really weird. Anyway, hope that was helpful for you. Let's move on to Paulo Secco. Paulo Secco is thinking about the story in this piece. He has this crystal in the center of the scene that is meant to portray. It's meant to suck the life out of the environment, right? So how do we do that as a visual storyteller, right? Like what are some of the levers that we can use? So let me take you through like my quick thought process, right? So if we are playing around with something that is literally stealing the life from all organic matter in the area, the thing that is sucking the life from all organic stuff needs to be anti-organic, right? Because that contradiction is what kind of enforces the idea of this whole setup, right? What I mean by that is to think about man-made shapes. And if you think about shape language, think about something that has a sense of danger to it, right? So man-made shapes is literally just like, think anything machined, right? Like a sphere or a cube or a rectangle or something like that, that is very geometric, very man-made feeling. Do something along those shapes. And if we're trying to indicate that this is literally draining this area from life, my go-to would think about shape language and go for something like slightly pointy, right? So I just started looking up shapes, and this is literally like the first page of Google where I found something like this. This looks pretty cool. I kind of like what it's already saying from like a shape, right? It kind of feels alien. It's kind of pointy and spiky, but it's not too spiky because we don't want to have like, I don't know, a sphere with like a bunch of spikes on it. That looks like really cringe. We want to kind of do something with this shape, I think. And it looks really alien. So I would say replace the crystal with something more like this, right? Have it partially floating, or it can be stuck in the ground, or whatever you want to do with it, right? But have that as like the main shape. And then we can think about, okay, what are the secondary effects, right? I think you already talked about like having dead foliage, which is a really good idea. And then having a gradient going from like dead foliage, like completely dead, to like whittling away to like semi-intact foliage, right? So that we can see a gradient of the types of foliage that is destroying, right? It's almost, we need to really think about like all the layers that would make this work, right? So the center around the sphere would be just dead, like only sand. There's nothing else left there. And then we take a couple steps away and you have some smaller bushes and some dead trees. A couple of other steps away and we see like smaller shrubs and all that kind of stuff, like partially dead, right? And think about what that gradient means and play around with that gradient specifically. Norton's saying there's a good GDC talk on visual storytelling by a Rockstar art director here on YouTube. Yeah, I mean, GDC has a lot of good talks. There's a lot of really, really good talks on GDC. I'm not sure. Oh, I saw one like ages ago. I can't remember the name. But yeah, GDC has a lot of good talks. Even the older ones. Like go watch the older ones, especially when it comes to art. Those are still relevant, most of them. Cool. That's it. Cool little concept. Cool little thing to play around with, Paulo. So best of luck. Next up, we have Lena. Lena is making this really cool scene. And I think the question is feedback on the lighting, right? So the daytime lighting feels a bit off to me. So that's where I spent most of my time. I think, first of all, my initial impression is bloom. There's way too much bloom happening. So dialing that down or making that more localized to certain areas can already help. Maybe you can do some cool stuff with like a post-processing volume specifically for the bloom in like a certain area or something, you know? God, I forget what they're called, but there are like post-process... Dang it, I forget what they're called. There are specific post-process volumes that work when you're not even in them, but they allow you to control, like, let's say the contrast or the bloom or like very simple settings in a certain area. So you can like specifically art direct certain areas. That might be really cool to look into. But yeah, it's looking great. Too much bloom. I would also say maybe put like more focus towards like the bench area. Because right now we are drawing a lot of focus to like the bottom part of the image where you probably want more stuff to be happening here, you know? And maybe, I don't know. I thought about this idea where you could have like fake palm leaves, right? No textures, no whatever, just make a quick geometry and just have it like in front of your light to cast like fake shadows so that you can kind of push the light up your frame more, right? So I'm doing this very intentionally to put like the intensity of the light more around the center of the scene rather than towards the bottom, right? So maybe something like this could help. Plus, this gives you like a lot of control. A lot of control with like how much shadow you want because you got these fake mesh that you can play with, right? You could even do like a light function. Yeah, potentially. I think a simple shape would be easier. But yeah, those are the two things that I would definitely say. Like the bloom is probably the biggest thing. So try to reduce that and make it more localized to certain areas. And then the fake shadows to like push your light up the frame a little bit more. But yeah, I love the night light. I did a couple of adjustments to the night light as well. Did I? Yeah, here we go. This is the only thing that I did. I think this is weird, right? Like a subtle increase of the bloom on the window and the light can actually help you, again, like be a bit more focused towards like the top, right? Just a little bit. But that's very subtle. Cool. But yeah, this is awesome. Really awesome stuff, Lena. I love what you're doing with it. Really cool that it's almost done. Darius came in with some really, really good tips as well. So thank you for that, Darius. But yeah, really good stuff, Lena. Right, and then we have a quick one from Hadzino. Hadzino is basically asking about the transition between the cloth and the feet, and if it's okay to add your own twist. I'm not sure what that means, honestly. Where you want to add your own twist. If that means that you want to deviate from the concept or like the actual object, sure. And maybe that's what you meant. So that's totally fine. And the other thing that I needed to add here was watch out with the cloth here, because it feels like the cloth, it's kind of sticking to the person. It doesn't feel like it's normally gravitating towards, like just straight down. You know, like if this is like a piece of fabric, you would almost imagine that it would like flow straight down. You know. So yeah, think about that. Yeah. Yeah, quick one. But yeah, good luck. I heard a lot of the times that lighting can make or break a scene. We're all mods, aren't we? Oh yeah. I mean, there's so much. Yeah. Sometimes I think this is sometimes what I refer to as the real opportunity cost, right? Especially when on Friday we look at portfolio reviews, people showing off like their finished work or like their portfolio. And sometimes there's still so much potential on the table. As in, you know, sometimes the lighting is a little bit off. Sometimes the presentation just is not really hitting the notes. And there's so much that you can do with it by spending like a couple days extra on like lighting or presentation, you know? It is actually crazy how much potential gets left on the table sometimes. But hey, that's why we're here. I like the GDC Embark talk on the character creation pipeline in their studio. It's all heavily based on Houdini. Yeah, makes sense. If you wanna optimize your production timelines, you will have to do something like it, right? I also love that, and this is just an assumption, right? Or maybe I saw that in like a no-clip documentary about it. I'm not sure actually. But there were also like a lot of hints that they have Houdini in like their environment art workflow, where they can pretty much take scan data. And again, I don't know if this is true, but I assume that it would be because they're very tech focused, right? I can almost see that there's a pipeline where they just take like the raw photo scan data and then just like throw it into Houdini and then it spits out like the finished low poly just because it does all the processing for you, right? Of course, something like that is going to have its drawbacks and it's going to have its limitations and all that kind of stuff too. So I can imagine that is going to work really well for like organic stuff. But if you want to make man-made stuff, then yeah, how do you do that, right? Plus also it needs to exist for you to be able to photo scan it. But yeah, it's still cool regardless. Like all the tech that like surrounds like making games and like the workflows and improvements, super cool. Yeah, ish. Let's have a look. So basically you're asking about, or Hjalmar, you're asking about the poly count. They're pretty low poly right now, and maybe they look a little bit flat since there's not much silhouette variation. But if I add a bunch of loop cuts and break the silhouette, I feel like it won't be very optimized. I don't know if you were specifically talking about the ropes, but the ropes are fine. You know, I don't really see the need to add like way more. But I think when it comes to your geometry in general, this is again one of those situations where there's like a lot of potential that is just left on the table, right? Because you have a lot of cool stuff here, but then what you do with it is whenever you create like a silhouette, you keep it very straight. You know, everything is very straight. And you don't even need to create more geometry, right? You can literally just take pre-existing geometry and just be like, hey, this plank is now going to come out till here. This plank is going to stay the same. This is going to go out to here. This one is actually going inside. This is something that you can do on everything already without adding more geometry. And this is going to already help you so much in your silhouette read. Now, talking about your geometry, it has a lot of weird decimated geometry at this point, right? Which is probably from decimation. You can actually gain a lot of free loops by just doing a little bit of manual cleanup and then just adding those loops in. I think you can, because here I added some like areas where you have a vertice on the edges. If you just remove all the triangulation, right, to the best of your ability, and then just like draw a loop around the whole thing and make it actually like a bit more quadrified, you have a loop there that you can use to manipulate like geometry again, right? So it might be worth doing a little bit of cleanup. For this, I just added this as a like a little bonus, but make this stuff as non-destructive as possible. What I mean by that is have your kit of individual pieces to the left, do all the edits on that, and anything that is the final bridge is going to be instanced from that kit that you have on the left, right? What the benefit there is that now if I want to make adjustments to, let's say, hey, I want to add like a couple of loops and do a bunch of stuff to the geometry, I just do that to my kit that is like nicely laid out to the left. It's going to propagate to everything else in the scene that is going to be instanced, which means that I just need to work on the little kit on the left. And then everything is going to be, automatically updating all the instances. And then also your modifiers. This stuff is going to save your life. Dude, yeah, try to work in that way. Would cleanup be necessary though if there's no deformation? Well, no, but we are talking specifically about the current idea is that the person that we're talking about is worried about adding too much poly count, right? When the poly count is basically there, it is just triangulated mess. So we can clean this up, get somewhat nice poly count out of it, and get a bunch of free loops, right? Because to your point, like, if this is not going to deform, it is not necessary, right? But I still want some sort of limitation there to kind of keep it as low as we can, right? Because it gets very easy to go into this trap of like, oh, I'll just decimate it, and then I have like a single plank that is like 2K, which doesn't sound like too bad until you then start building a bridge like this, and we're dealing with like 200K, you know? That is the danger of it, right? So if you do, that doesn't mean that you have to do manual cleanup, but it gives you more control and more of a perspective of your geometry and the limits. They connected 3D softwares in Houdini, to Houdini in real time, and all changes update automatically, which is impressive. There's probably going to be a bit of downtime, right? Because Houdini takes a lot of time to process. But yeah, I mean, a lot of companies are doing this, to be fair. It is just that and this is something that I hate, is that it's usually hidden about like under proprietary tech, or, you know, they don't really talk about it. But a lot of studios are doing really interesting stuff with their pipelines. It's just you don't really get to see it, which is the annoying point. Yeah, we talked about this. So yeah, hopefully that is going to be helpful. Can you still modify the geometry of the instance? Yeah, because the instance, so let's say, okay. Let's say this is your plank, right? And then you duplicate that and you have an instance of that same plank, right? This is basically my master plank, right? So if I go in here and I make this plank look like this all of a sudden, it's going to propagate to all the instances in the scene. All of them. So that's why it is good to keep it as non-destructive as possible for the longest time. And then maybe for export, you just take all the meshes, you duplicate them, you collapse them all down, and you have like your solid FBX, right? But you always want to retain the relationship of like the instance and the parent, well, not master, but like parent, right? Because this stuff, oh my God, it saves you so much time. Like it is, let's imagine you have like a modular kit that is built out of like individual planks, and you have made like 100 different variations of that modular kit. If you have them instanced in Blender, you can just go and edit the original instances, or like the parent instance, or any instance that you want, really. It doesn't have to be the parent. You can literally just do the modeling on whatever instance you want, and it's going to propagate to all of them. I once saw Naughty Dog made their own tool for texturing submerged vehicles. They had a plane and a car in the middle, and a section of the car above the plane had a different texture. Yep. Yeah, a lot of companies do this stuff. God, I wish I could talk about the cool stuff that I used. A lot of it is covered by NDAs, so I can't talk about it. Even in like the more out-of-date engines that I used, God, they had so many cool tools. Like the actual tools the actual tools that like are used internally with like bigger companies. And some of them, sure, some of them have their quirks and they're like somewhat clunky to work with, but the output that they deliver, freaking amazing. Okay, 4 more. Let's have a look. As far as I understood, it's RGB masking work. Well, yeah, like the outcome is like RGB masking work, right? But it's just making it, if there's a tool that instead of me going into it and like manually doing it, it like automatically generates based on like the world that you place it in, that stuff is cool, you know? Because then you're saving me a bunch of time instead of, because normally if that doesn't work, right, then it's like, okay, I need a new RGB mask. So, okay, I'm gonna grab the car, I'm gonna look at the textures are fine, I'm gonna open Substance Painter. I think it's gonna be this submerged, I'm gonna add like the water level here, and then I do my mask setup, right? Now, you can just do it based on the context of the world that it's in, right? Just in the engine, which is awesome. And that is, it's actually an example of like a pretty straightforward tool, I would say. But it makes it cool nonetheless, you know? Because yeah, without those tools, oh my god, the amount of manual work that we need to do, chase. Cool, Umbrella. Thank you for sharing your work. You had no questions, which is okay. But I have some questions for you. First of all, what's the focal point? Which means, where am I going to be looking, right? Or like, where do you want me to look? Is probably going to be more applicable, right? Then also, what is the story, right? Because if you make something like this, I think it's fine, right? But it's a container of something that you want to tell, right? So what is the thing that you want to tell us? I can also say, like, on my first instinct, move the camera closer, have the camera. No, let's see. What options do we have here? You could even tell something where, let's say, this is the scene now, right? We're making it a little bit smaller. And then you have something in like the trash bags here. There's like, I don't know, the staircase is coming down here. Maybe there's like a trash bag. And that can then become the story, right? But there needs to be something for me to look at and try to figure that out as early as possible. And then lastly, looking at the references that you shared, a lot of these alleyways, they look really cool because they are so tight. So just make your alleyway tighter as well. So that was quick, but yeah, I hope that was helpful. Without that tool, how many attempts does it take to get a perfect mass? Or do you just submerge it further and call it a day? Well, it depends on how perfect it needs to be, right? Like if let's say in this hypothetical situation, you are gonna crawl underneath it or something like that, right? Then it needs to be perfect because your character is gonna be really close to it. If it's gonna be somewhere in the back, and if you submerge it, but it like the line doesn't matter, it doesn't really matter that much, right? So this is actually a good rule to keep in mind when you're doing game developer, right? Because when you are a game developer, and what I mean by that is, as an environment artist, you are still a game developer, right? So it's always good to keep in mind what the most important thing is in the game, because that is going to be your priority, right? So if you know that you are doing like, I don't know, a Last of Us game and you're walking through a level, you know that the golden path, which is like the most likely path, is where you want to put most of the focus on, right? And then the rest of it is still semi-important, but it's going to be less important than like the most likely path that people are going to walk, right? Between point A and B. So that's where you put your focus, right? because the rest of it is just less important than the other thing. So the same thing here, right? Like, depends on a bunch of factors. If you can crawl underneath it, if you get really close with the camera, if it's on the golden path, if it's an important thing to the story, like those factors, they all play into it. But it's a good question, though. It is a good question. Yeah, honestly, like, sometimes you can literally just, like, do a level art thing and just be like, yeah, okay, I'll just push it further down. It's fine. But that is, if you think about it, right? Like, the reason why that tool exists is because there was a constraint put on the artists, because there was probably a discussion. I can already see the discussion happening where it's like, hey, we're building a highway. That means that we're going to have like at least 20 different cars, and they might be submerged, or like, I don't know, in different type of states, right? How do we do that? How do we do that in an efficient way, right? Because you can make them all manually, but that's time consuming as well, right? That's where that tool probably comes from. And it's like, oh, now we can just like put cars underwater and it's going to do texturing for us. So that gives everyone the freedom to, first of all, add more cars, you know, and make the world more dense. And it's going to help like the storytelling too. Do games use runtime virtual textures, or is that too costly for performance? I actually don't know too much about runtime virtual texturing. The only thing that I know about it is that, well, the Unreal Engine implementation of it, right? But I haven't worked with it consciously on any other projects that I've worked on. So I'm afraid that I can't tell you too much about it. But from what I know, it can be more optimized, right? Depending on how you use them. Because the reason why they exist is for optimization. Mainly, right? Is the only way to blend landscape materials and other asset materials? No, you can do it in a bunch of different ways. You can use depth fields as well. You can also just do like, I think depth fields is probably a good one, because it allows you to sample like distance between two surfaces and stuff. RVTs is a good one. RVTs is just like the easiest one, you know. But yeah, because what RVTs does, it's basically gives you access to the terrain textures, right? If you just want like generic stuff, you could still use like blending with like different surfaces, but that's too technical for myself. That's like a very case by case thing. Cool. A couple more people to go through. We'll start with Owen. So how does the snow blend feel now? I think you asked me a question last week, after the session, that you needed to add meshes. I think that's the only thing, that's the main thing that I still want to see. Sure, there's still something where I kind of want to see a little bit of a curve here, you know, like it's kind of pointing me in a certain direction maybe, and then maybe having like snow meshes. And the road curve, but the rest of it looks pretty good. Road curve, not the actual road, but like the snow on the road. Because yeah, I mean, you talked about like creating additional decals and stuff. That's gonna look really good. We've got a good base now, right? We're getting a little bit more density, which is nice. I think once we have the snow meshes and then some of the additional decals, that stuff is gonna look really cool. So yeah, great stuff. Keep it up, man. Next, we go to MCFal. Let's see. I haven't had a look at your work yet. The only question. Thank you, MCFal. Appreciate it. Do you have any advice on how to do the foliage on the side of the cliffs, like in the reference? Oh yeah, right. maybe not as dense, but I want to get it somewhat close. I mean, I don't really have like any advice on it, to be honest. It is probably just going to be like very stereotypical like foliage creation. I don't think there's going to be like anything special out of it. The only thing that's going to be special about it is the shape, you know? So you will probably have to, like if we isolate like some of this stuff, you will probably have to make it so, like if we look at it from the side, right? God, I got an itchy nose. All the leaf cards are probably going to have to droop down. But yeah, honestly, that's the main thing that I would have to say. And then just think about it as a standard modular kit, right? So make a big cluster, you know, like a big cluster, make a smaller cluster, make an even smaller one, and then make, I don't know, make like a vertical section. And that's obviously like a simplification of it. But I mean, that's what it comes down to, really. And that should give you enough stuff to then make the rest of the scene with. Maybe for these patches, you would also create like another big section, right? And maybe make the sections like a bit more organic rather than square like I just did. Because that's going to limit you somewhat. So yeah. Modular foliage kit. But yeah, I would say, I mean, nothing out of the ordinary, really. Nothing that immediately comes to mind. Yeah, that is one thing that you can have fun with making a tool for, you know? So have some fun with that, buddy. And then last but not least, we have mana. Let's see. I'd love some general thoughts about what's working and what's not working in the block out, both in terms of composition and story. Okay. Okay, we're sticking, or like not we're sticking, but like we're taking the story from the concept, right? Cool. I mean, there's nothing too much to say about the story then, right? Maybe the only thing that I could say is, can we play into... but I don't want to add too many things to it, you know? I think sometimes the one focal point or like the one asset is probably going to be stronger than trying to add like multiple things to it. Because here's, okay, I'll give you my thoughts and then you can do whatever you want with them, right? You make the choice. Because I'm thinking this little like rocking horse feels a little bit lonely, right? So we're hinting at a child being present or was present at some point here, right? Can we maybe then add other stuff? Maybe... I don't know, like a little crib with like one of those little like oh, maybe not the spinny wheel, but here's the thing, right? Like it starts filling up the scene like really quickly, and I don't know if I like that. Or you could this feels very Fallout. The thing that I'm gonna suggest next, so this is super biased. Maybe there's just some like I don't know. Maybe it's like a a party, you know? And then maybe there's like God, what would it be? This is so Fallout. Like some bunting, you know, still attached or something. I don't know. This very much depends on what you want to do with the scene, right? I think what you got now is like a very subtle interpretation, which can potentially be more impactful. I think what I'm trying to go for is I'm trying to go for what you would typically see like more in games, right? Like a less subtle but more over exaggerated kind of interpretation. So I'll leave you with those options. It's basically comes down to more child stuff. But I also don't mind that it's too subtle. The other thing that I was gonna bring up is I know that the foliage is very work in progress, right? But try to think about density, right? Like this almost feels like it's very purposely going to where you want it to go, and then it has like a big chunk up here, which usually doesn't make too much sense. So what I would do is I would really try and cluster things up, or like really make it like really thick around where it comes in and on the floor. And then have like certain areas where it's going up, and then you could have like this area where it's going up as well. But here, I would probably do something like very subtle. You know, just like a couple of vines with like some leaves hanging from it. So it would basically have because yeah, you have thick foliage, you know, and it's trying to like grow and grow and grow, and then it's starting to look like a new place, right? So it's growing upwards. And then you could like extend this maybe, and there's maybe like another fringy thing. But it kind of needs to go from something like pretty thick to something that like slowly becomes thinner, you know? Hey McFal, I followed the rules for today with only one question. Good. You did your homework. I'm proud of you. You get a sticker before you go home. And good evening, Paulo. Good to see you too. We already talked about your work. It's really cool stuff. Like what you had going on. Yeah, but you can do some really cool stuff with the foliage here. Kind of have some like vines like poking in. I love ivy. Ivy's so flexible. I love it. Cool. That's mostly the stuff that I have to say about this though. Cool. Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. I mean, you've got some like books here and stuff. Yeah. Cool though, Notala. Really good stuff. Love to see it. And that was it for the week. Oh god. I love only having to do one question, so I really appreciate it, everyone. Yeah, I think I also don't mind people not having a question and just being like, hey, you pick what you think is the most prevalent in the scene, right? So I'm gonna make an adjustment to the post again, so that you don't have to ask a question. I think it's helpful, but if you don't want to ask something, then I'm just gonna go with my gut and tell you the first thing that I'm thinking about. Getting quite hectic with the team challenge, so don't do any work on my personal stuff. But next week the grind starts again. I mean, you're going from grind to grind, man. Like, yeah, it's okay. I know that the team challenges get like really intense, so yeah, don't feel too bad for not working on your personal work. Take a little bit of a moment to breathe as well between the two things, you know. But yeah, oh my god, team challenge are looking so good. It's always like this in the final week though, right? Final deadline. People are rushing because it's all feeling real now. But yeah, everyone's doing such a good job. I'm honestly really proud of everyone, you know? Oh, thanks, Devil. I mean, I've been doing this as a professional for like 10 years, right? So there must be something good at there. But yeah, I appreciate it. And it's really weird because the last professional thing that I posted, well, the last personal thing that I posted was like 3 years, 3 years, probably gonna be longer, like 4 years ago or something. Just wait until you play Fable. That's all gonna be Tim's work. Oh, there's actually this is really interesting. I think how should I say this? This is a weird one. So I obviously can't say too much about this, right? But I think this is a project that I'm really proud of when it comes to the artistry that's on display. I'm really proud of the things that I have done in it and the opportunities that I've gotten within making this game. So I am really excited for everyone to see it and for me to be able to share more because, yeah, I am honestly really proud of the stuff that I've done. And obviously for the rest of the team as well, right? Like this is making games is not like a one-man show. It is, yeah, it's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of stuff going on. But yeah, I'm proud of what we've done. That's so nice to hear. Looks so fun from what I've been shown so far. Yeah. Might have to pick that up then. It's not a sales pitch, but yeah, I am definitely proud of the things that I've touched from like an artistic perspective, you know? And it's weird, like in previous games that I worked on, right? It's not that I wasn't proud, but I never had this feeling of like, oh my god, we're trying to push the bar, you know? For example, yeah. I mean, I don't mean this with like any disrespect towards like the people that I've worked with before, and I don't think it's gonna come across like that, right? But like the stuff that we were doing on Far Cry was good, but it wasn't great, you know? Rita, that's an interesting comment. So, it is fucking hard work, you know? So, yeah, I think it depends. It depends on your. But this is gonna get so pedantic, right? It depends on your definition of fun, but I think satisfaction is a word that I love using with this. I got a lot of satisfaction on being able to work on this project, but there were a lot of moments when it wasn't fun because it's just work, right? I mean, I don't want to overhype game development. It is still cool, and oh my god, it is fucking amazing that you get to work on these things. But a lot of the work is not fun per se. It is stuff that needs to get done to get the game in a better shape than it needs to be, right? Even when it comes to the art, right? There's certain moments where you just have to get through things. But yeah, I still get a lot of added satisfaction from it aligned with the kind of environments that I like. Yeah. I get it, and I don't want to downplay like the ability or like the opportunity to be able to work on those games, right? Like on any game. Like I'm proud of on any game that I worked with. But I'm just proud of it in different ways, you know? And I've never really had that sense of like, oh, we're really trying to push the artistic boundaries, you know, in a variety of ways. And that's what I felt on this project, for example. And still feel, you know. I don't know why, but I like abandoned environments a lot. Yeah, me too. I have like a bunch of books about like abandoned stuff. I love it a lot. Hope you'll be able to tell us more about it. Yeah, I wonder how that's gonna work. Because yeah, I'm in a different situation now, right? I am freelancing as a contractor for them now. So timelines are a little bit split, or are a little bit different between when I will be working on it and not, you know, compared to the release of the game. So yeah, I hope that I can talk about it, or else I'll just have to wait long enough and then I can finally open up about it. But I would love to show some stuff. But yeah, once I do, I'll definitely tell you more about it, because that would be awesome. I would love to give you a tour, you know, and talk about some of the stuff that I've done. Yeah, like in 10 years. I know. That's why I hate NDAs. I want to be able to talk about this stuff, you know? It would be so awesome. Like as you're making it, because there's so many interesting things. There's so many interesting things that you encounter along the way, you know, like in actual game development, and how stuff works, and like how the interplay between like all the different principles and disciplines work. Like so much interesting stuff there. I mean, I always try to tell it from like a very generalized perspective, right? Which is probably the way that I have to do things, but yeah. Breakdowns, please, if possible. Yeah, those are going to be... It's really interesting with professional development. It is very restricted what you can and can't show, because everything has to be vetted by the company. And that's why you don't see a lot of breakdowns from like professional companies, because first of all, it's not really worth it from like a marketing perspective for the company, right? And if we show like a bunch of, I don't know, boring breakdowns, people might start like picking it apart and scrutinizing it and all that kind of stuff, right? There's some really interesting examples. There was this is like a while ago, but there was like the triangular like triangular grapes in like Final Fantasy or something like that, right? People will look at this stuff with like, yeah, with like magnifying glasses, you know? But yeah, we'll see. Where would you put Fable on the stylized to realistic scale? I don't think I can answer that. I'm going to be on the safe side, and I'm not going to answer that question. It's the nature of NDAs, unfortunately. I have to be very careful. Oh, Blood of the Dawnwalker. Oh yeah, there was a live stream for that, right? I kind of missed it. Oh no, I'm sorry. No, it's fine. It's fine. I will tell people when I won't answer something. Like I'm totally fine with people asking any question they want. Like if I find it I don't know, if inappropriate for like NDA reasons, I will just tell you. That's fine. But I would rather have you ask all the questions than be afraid to ask me the questions, you know? Was it good, MCFal? Was the live stream good? Music gives me major Witcher vibes. I need to check it out then. Oh, yeah, the music in The Witcher is so good. Why would companies not want wireframes to be released? Isn't it all just dependent on the workflow different companies use and techniques for texturing? Well, there's no value. There's just no inherent value for a company to show off wireframes, you know? There's no monetary incentive. There's nothing that they can really gain from it, right? And like you said, it might actually be bad for the company if you are able to deduce like what types of tools they use to potentially make certain things, you know, because then you're giving away in a very roundabout way company secrets, right? So it's something to be very careful of, especially because this is the realm where I'm from, right? Like with AAA companies that all have their internal engines. It's all closed. It's all behind closed doors. Most of the tools that I get to use on a day-to-day basis, you will not see unless you go work for the same company that I do, right? There's no other company that's using this. So yeah, it's pretty limited. That's why it's classified under NDA, right? Like it's a literal trade secret. And if you then could potentially deduce that from the wireframes and all those other things, I don't know. I think it just comes from like a risk perspective, you know? I find it so cool when companies show breakdowns. Yeah, me too. I suppose artists don't need to post it since they already got a job. No, I'll tell you what it is. There might actually be conversations inside most companies from artists saying like, hey, I want to show wireframes, but the company doesn't allow them. Because, yeah, again, there's no gain there, right? Because even if you think about an art blast, right? Like the art blasts that happen on ArtStation, they're most of the time pretty curated. So for example, the one that we did for Far Cry when that released, right? All the images that we were showing in the art blast, excuse me, then they had to be vetted by the art director. So we had a week or two where we could send them like all the messages and then edit them with like all the company logos and all that kind of stuff, right? We got templates and all that kind of stuff to take care of. But they still needed to vet them all. So they were actually like really particular with like the stuff that they were putting out, just because it is an art blast is another form of just marketing, right? Because sometimes these things get a lot of traction. I think it used to be a bigger deal back then. Stuff like weighted normals or even trim sheets weren't like codified knowledge for a while. Yeah, I mean, I agree. So here's the thing. I think there are still like really unique tools that are being used by certain companies, right? And to be fair, I am personally more of the opinion that you should be able to share these things more, right? But yeah, companies see it a different way, right? Just because the risk of being trade secrets and all that kind of stuff. I love the Indiana Jones art blast, a lot of great stuff in there, but not super in depth for all of them. Yeah. I mean, that might also mean that there's like different people with different priorities, right? Like some of them went more in depth than other ones. But yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, that's just the way that it is with this industry. It's still very secretive. Because in my opinion, I mean, sure, you can tell, or you can kind of showcase like, hey, this is the workflow that we used, but then the other companies still needs to put like development budget towards like recreating the same tool. And I think most, well, if we talk about art tools specifically, right? Most of the art tools specifically, they are not like really revolutionary, right? I mean, some of them are really fucking cool. But if, let's say, another company uses that tool, they might be a little bit quicker, but they might still make a shit game, you know? For example, like it would be a completely different thing if you have like a really new game design thing that you've come up with and people love it, and then other companies just like replicate it, right? That has completely different implications, in my opinion. But yeah, who knows? I watched some part of No Access course, and apparently he can't show anything on his portfolio because of NDAs. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Nemesis system still patented. Yeah. Loading screen games still patented by Nintendo. That's why we don't have them. I mean, not that it matters in the age of like SSDs, but still patented. I agree. even like new updates that some people find great, I don't think it's that big of a deal. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, right? Like we have like the open ecosystem of, well, I would say semi-open ecosystem of like Unreal Engine, right? Because there's still companies developing in Unreal Engine that have their own internal toolings, right, built on top of it too. But yeah, who knows? I don't know. Maybe if I were to run a company and you spend like so much of your time and effort and money to make a tool for then just another company to make it in half the time because they know how it works now. I don't know. That also doesn't sound great now that I say it out loud. I still hate Epic for ruining Quixel. What did they do to Quixel? Quixel signed a deal. And a deal you make with 2 people. Or 2 companies. Did you use Anvil when working at Ubisoft? Yes, I used Anvil and I used Dunia. And I had a little dabble in Snowdrop as well, but that wasn't long. But yeah, there's still a lot of people, and this is where it's hurtful, right? Like if I get that you want to protect trade secrets, you know, and then you stop people from posting work under NDA. That is totally fine and understandable. Well, no, like you stop people from posting like damaging material on your portfolio. I can get that. However, the thing that I don't like is that you have such a chokehold on like the next potential move of an artist by just telling them like, oh, can't publish anything. It's all under NDA. They killed it and made half the assets purchasable on the Fab. Yeah, but I felt like Quixel was always going to be like this deal that was going to go away at some point. It's, yeah. How many engines do you think have their own nanite tech by now? I mean, a lot of them. I mean, Ubisoft has it. Yeah, I mean, I would say a lot of them. Yeah. I don't know the number. But it makes sense from like if you are relying on like dense worlds, right? Where like geometry density is the next evolution, you would need nanite to be able to render that, right? So like anything that is linear, so let's say like a God of War, I don't really see like a big benefit there unless they have the ambition to then become like more open world, or I don't know, do something where like the geometry ambitions are like out of this world. But I don't see those budgets ever being needed, ever needing to be higher than they currently are. Or like they still seem to be manageable, you know, even without nanite. Yeah. Who knows? It's a good question. I don't know the answer. But yeah, I am going to head on out. It was lovely hanging out with all of you. I'll be back on Friday for portfolio reviews. But yeah, I've got some other stuff to take care of. I need to get back on the grind for like the landing page. So I wish you all a nice evening. Thanks for hanging out with me, and go check out all the other cool stuff that we do, okay? Right. Have a good evening all.